All right, so this is just a quick precursor to the video. I just wanted to mention real quick, the video is kind of long. It's approximately an hour long. I made it pretty detailed for the Fox Body guys, especially the 83, 84, and 85 model years. But if you're just here to kind of get my thoughts on the Holley 600 carburetor install, you might want to skip around a little bit. That's up to you. But if you're a Fox Body guy and you're doing this install, I tried to make it pretty detailed for those guys. So again, apologize it's so long, but hope it helps people, and hope you enjoy. All right, so I'm getting ready to unbox the new carburetor that came in for my 1984 Mustang. It's a Holley 600 CFM vacuum secondaries, Street Warrior. They run about $370. I did a little research online and I found this one for $340. It's brand new. They do sell refurbished ones. They're a little bit cheaper, but I decided to go new. I didn't want to get anything I might have to toy around with. So anyway, new Holley carburetor. I'm going to do an install video for the 1984 Mustang. My original carburetor is leaking in several spots. Eventually I'll send it out to get rebuilt, but right now I want to get the car up and running. So these are fairly inexpensive. So I'm going to do an install video, review, and hopefully it works out. All right, so here's everything you're going to get with it. Instructions, obviously, some warranty paperwork, a couple stickers, hardware, gasket. They give you a little piece of wire here. I probably won't end up using that because I'm probably going to run right from the fuse panel, so that's not going to be long enough, but I'll explain that a little bit later. That's going to be for the electric choke. It needs 12 volts. When the keys turn forward, needs a constant 12 volts. So again, I'll go over that later. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. First impressions, it's your typical 4160 Holley. This is their, they consider this universal. You can definitely spend more money on a Holley. It's their entry level, but looks pretty decent. Hopefully it works out. And, again, the reviews I read were pretty good on it. I've never personally installed one. The Street Warrior anyway. I've installed Holleys before. Again, 4160s are pretty much your basic Holley. So anyway, that's it. We're going to get the hood popped and get set up to start installing this. All right, so I'm going to start getting things ready. I'm going to get the air cleaner off, and I'm going to take my distributor cap off, take the wires off. I'm going to give myself as much room as I can to get this old carburetor off. I'm going to kind of gear this towards the Fox Body Mustang. Again, this is a 1984 GT350. It's got the 5-liter, 5-speed. But again, this is pretty much a universal carburetor. It's going to fit on any square bore type setup. Doesn't have to be a Fox Body. It could be a GM product. Could be anything really. My car has the Edelbrock Performer intake on it. Again, square bore, pretty straightforward. So I got a spacer on there. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later. The car sat for 12 years, had some heat soak issues, so I put that spacer on, and I haven't had the car up and running yet since I put the spacer on. Started having problems with the carburetor, obviously leaking and whatnot. So anyway, we're doing a full tune-up on this, plugs, wires, cap, rotor, and we're going to do this carburetor. And hopefully it's going to run better. So I'm going to go ahead and get this air cleaner off and get set up. All right, so there's a shot at the original carburetor. Again, if you're doing a Fox Body and you have a 83, 84, or 85, that's pretty much, if you have the stock carburetor, that's what you're going to have. I believe it's a 4180, they considered it. It was made by Holley for Motorcraft. Pretty decent carburetor, actually, except, you know, it was an 80s car, so with the emissions and stuff, it, you know, had some emission controls on there. There's really not much to adjust on it because they pretty much made it unadjustable for that reason. With the emission laws and stuff. There is a trick with these. I'm not going to get into it with this video. There is some adjustments on the bottom, but they're permanently sealed from the factory. You can drill them out and adjust these carburetors if necessary, but kind of a little bit of a pain in the neck. They're just not in a good spot to begin with, and you have to take the whole carburetor off to drill them out. So anyway, again, if you're a Fox body guy doing this, 83, 84, 85, or even any Fox body for that matter, if somebody made it a carbureted car, even an 82 for that matter. 82 was the first year of the Fox body with the 4-barrel. So, but anyway, that's that. We're going to start digging into this. I'm going to remove the cap and get that out of our way, undo our plugs. So if you're watching this video to learn how to do this, if you're going to, you know, for a lot of people, this is pretty basic. It might not even be the video for certain people if you've done this kind of thing 100 times. But if you're a guy that just bought a car, Fox body or whatever, and you're watching this video to learn how to do it, you know, again, I'm not trying to state the obvious here, but mark your plugs. Make sure you put them back in the right firing order, or you'll be looking it up later and playing around with the wires. So I know the firing order for this car, so I'm just going to pop these off and get the cap off, and we're going to make ourselves some room so we can get at this gas line and undo that. You can get at it. You can actually leave this on if you want, but it's kind of a pain in the neck. It doesn't take long to do it. Pop these two tabs off, and your cap will come right off. All right, so again, I'm kind of gearing this towards the Fox body guys. So if you have an 83, 84, 85 carbureted car, I have an aftermarket air cleaner. I did some mods to this car about 15 years ago, 14, 15 years ago. Equal length headers, there's a cam in this car, underdrive pulleys, performer Edelbrock intake, that kind of thing. So anyway, mine's not exactly stock. If yours is, you know, you're going to have the snorkel set up, and your air cleaner is going to have a lot of vacuum lines and that kind of thing. Just make sure you mark those where they came from so you can put it back where they came from, obviously. This one here, all the emission stuff was taken off years ago, so I don't have the smog pump and all that to worry about. So anyway, just wanted to mention that, you know, because I can't show you because I don't have the original air cleaner on mine. But again, just mark everything. Pretty basic. I'm just getting this coil out of my way as well. Again, aftermarket, so yours may not be set up like that. I'm going to start removing the vacuum lines. Again, yours may have more if yours is still original. You'll definitely have this guy here. That's a braided thing I added years ago. That's coming off. I don't like the way that looks. But you'll have that one for sure. It goes down to here. Set that to the side. This guy right here, that should go to your PCV valve. Take that guy off. Should just pull off. Pop this out here. That should pull right off. You have a couple electrical connections here. Probably going to need a flathead screwdriver or something to pry out on the tab a little bit. Be careful, these things get brittle after a while.
All right, so your throttle, that's actually going to pull right off. Again, be careful, this is plastic. But there's, it's just a snap-in. There's a ball on the other end of this. Here's a close-up of it. Just a clip, and that snaps right onto that ball. All right, next we're going to remove these two bolts right here. One there, one there. 7/16, 11 millimeter will work. I'm just getting that out of the way. Again, just trying to make easy access to the gas line and this nut over here. You could finagle it, but I've learned over the years sometimes it's just easier to get stuff out of your way. Screw those back in so we don't lose them. You know, again, I'm probably going to get this carburetor rebuilt at some point. Only because it's original to the car, so. But who knows? I'm probably going to end up liking this new carburetor and leaving it on. But again, down the road or the next owner, definitely hang on to all your old stuff. Gas line is next. I would definitely get yourself a tubing wrench. If not, you got a good possibility of stripping that flare nut. So it's going to be a 5/8. And chances are the top of this is going to spin on you. It may not. I've had luck in the past where you can get this guy loose without that moving, but I just had this carburetor off recently, so I know it's going to move. So I'm going to use a 1-inch wrench to hold the top. And then again, your 5/8 tubing wrench. And this is why we just removed all that stuff, because it's pretty tight in here. I'm going to stuff a shop tile down in here. I don't know if you can see that on there, but I got a puddle of gas because that was one of my leaks, but all these gaskets here are leaking too. So anyway, you might want to throw a shop towel down there. You might get a little bit of gas out of there. You probably won't get much, but all right, so once that's off, all we should have left at this point is our 4 nuts, 1, 2, 3, 4, going around. That's going to be a 1/2-inch socket. All right, you're going to have a nut and washer on each one of those. Once we get the 4 of those off, this carburetor should lift off at that point. Again, if yours is stock, all you should have is the carburetor, gasket, and then your manifold. I have the carburetor, gasket, spacer, gasket. Again, you may or may not have that. If you're stock, you won't. So this should lift straight off now. All right, once your carburetor is off, that's what you're going to see. Your gasket will probably stay behind on the manifold, and you should have your 4 studs in the manifold still. I just put these in. These are new. They're a little bit taller than the standard ones because of my spacer that I just installed. But anyway, you should have 4 studs there. Hopefully they're still in good shape and you can just reuse them. Remove your old gasket, obviously. If anything sticks, which it probably will, take a fresh razor blade and clean it off really good. I even took some like 400 grit sandpaper once I got the gasket off and kind of cleaned up the manifold a little bit. Put some shop towels or something clean inside of here so nothing falls down in. So once you got that nice and clean, then you can pop your new gasket on and you can start reinstalling the new carburetor. There's a side-by-side view. They look very similar. Again, 4160. This is a 4180. This was specifically built for the 84 Mustang, actually 83 to 85. In fact, if you can read that, it says manufactured by Holley for Motorcraft. But again, very similar design. Automatic choke. This one has adjustments for fine tuning. This was made not to be adjusted. Again, there is a trick to it. You can drill these plugs out down on the bottom, and you can do adjustments, but it's a terrible spot to get at. So it's really not made to be adjusted. This one here obviously is. So, but Holley says this is pretty much plug and play. They test them at the factory, and you're really not supposed to have to adjust them. I hope that's true. We'll find out. If we have to adjust it, we'll go through everything. So there they are. I got the new gasket on, and I'm going to get ready to set this guy down in place. Okay, so once you get your nuts and washers on, you're going to go ahead and go around and tighten everything up. Make sure you do a crisscross pattern. In other words, if you start here, go from here to there, to here to there. And just keep repeating that till you get it where it's nice and tight. The book calls for 60 to 80 inch-pounds. If you have an inch-pound torque wrench, go ahead and do that. If not, if you're comfortable doing it by feel, that's fine too. Just make sure you have it tight enough. You don't want any vacuum leaks. But there is such thing as too tight too, so just be careful with that. All right, next we're going to put our stud on. They give you 2 different ones here. So find the one that was the same size as your other one. They don't look much different, but this one's actually a tad smaller, the one on the right here. And that's the one I'm going to need. All right, we're going to go ahead and put our stud on there now. They give you 2 different types. Make sure you choose the one that's got the right size ball for your throttle. This one here is going to end up going in that hole there. Pretty much lines up, smidge off. You want to put this on in its relaxed position. You obviously don't want it like that. So again, try to find the hole that makes the most sense. You don't want anything binding up on you later. That one's a 7/16 wrench. And it should snap right in there now. I may have to fine tune this a little bit, but it was pretty close. Hopefully yours will be too. But if you have to move this bracket around or whatever, you may have to fiddle around with it. But I'm thinking that's going to be pretty good right there. All right, we're going to hook up our distributor vacuum advance. That's that hose we took off earlier. It had that metal braided stuff like that on it. I took that off. I just got the black hose now. So anyhow, we're going to hook that back up in front of the distributor. All right. And now, very important, this line here, this vacuum line, don't hook it up to the vacuum lines on the bottom. Those are full vacuum ports. You want to go on this guy right here. This port's specifically for that. All right, so to get access at this here, I got to get this line, the original line, loosened up from down on the fuel pump so we can get this to pull out a little bit so we can get a better shot at cutting that tube where we need it. First thing I'm going to do is get my fitting, and I'm going to set it in place and make my mark where we're going to end up cutting this. All right, so here's the stuff that we're going to need to do this. This fitting here is going to make life a lot easier. It's like, I want to say this was like $12 or something like that. Not really cheap, but definitely going to make the process easier. If not, you would have to have a compression fitting, and then you would have to get a piece of this type hose. Usually comes in like foot lengths or longer. You'd have to cut a piece off, and then you would have to compress it yourself. But this is already done at the factory on this end. So it's one less thing that we got to worry about. So this end here will be going on to the cut end of the old steel line in the car, and that's going to give us our starting point for the rubber hose. That's going to fit over there, and then pick yourself up some good squeeze clamps. You can use regular hose clamps, you know, that you tighten down. I don't particularly like them. I don't think they look very good, number one, and number two, they don't always do a good job if you over tighten them. They snap sometimes. So I like these. You just got to make sure you get the right size. When you expand these, you can slip them over the hose, and when you let go, they're really heavy spring, and it makes a nice tight connection. So anyway, this is the guy you really need. It's not really readily available around here. Like I went to Advanced Auto and that kind of thing. I ended up finding it at Napa. That's what you're looking for. Napa does have a part number. I'll see if I can find that. I'll see if I can add that so you guys can see the Napa part number. But anyway, that's the guy you want. It's 5/16 compression to 5/16 rubber hose. All right, so follow your line down and figure out where you want to start. I know this is horrible here to see with the camera. Basically, there's the carburetor, distributor, and right after that bend right there is where I want this thing to start. That's going to give me a nice gradual bend where I can get my inline filter in and then change back over to rubber. So what you're going to do at this point on this compression fitting, make sure you cut your line or mark your line. Right now we're just marking it. We got to get it up and out of the way so we can cut it. You're going to want that fuel line to go into here, and it butts out somewhere in the center of here. So make sure you set this in a place where the end of this is going to end up right where you want it. Make a little mark on your line there, and then once you get that up and out of the way where you can actually work on it, you'll have a mark. You can cut it. And then we're going to compress this guy on, and then we can start with our rubber hose. All right, so next you're going to crawl underneath the front of your car, locate your oil filter. Again, 83 to 85 Fox body Mustang, 5 liter. Right next to it, this is your fuel pump up in here, and this is that fuel line that we've been working with. And that's the other end that you have to crack loose. Actually, you got to move it around a little bit better so we can cut it and put our new fitting on. All right, so there's your fitting down at the fuel pump disconnected. So now we should be able to move that line around a little more freely. All right, so there's our gas line, and it's kind of hard to see, but that's my mark right there in front of my finger. If it's an air conditioning car, this thing is in your way the whole time, pretty much for this whole project. But you can finagle this in a way. See how it's nice and loose now? So now you should be able to get your tubing cutter on there and cut that section off. I do recommend a smaller one if you have it, or get one. I do have a smaller one, just don't know where it is. So I'm going to try this guy, and hopefully I can fit it in there. All right, so we're going to slide this on first, this end down onto the pipe, like that. Slide that down out of your way for now if you want. Next, you're going to take your ferrule, slide that on. Now we're going to work with this guy here. We're going to slide that on the hose or line until it bottoms out, and then we're going to start tightening that nut with that ferrule. You definitely want to get a wrench on the inside here and a wrench to tighten it up, and try to hold it as still as possible. You don't want to be crooked or cockeyed or anything like that, because those ferrules will crimp crooked sometimes, and you'll end up with a leak. So you definitely want to take your time with this part. All right. Again, this is a tight spot. It's going to fight you the whole time. Slide this guy up. All right, so once you get this started, again, make sure that the hose or the gas line is bottomed out inside this fitting. I can't say that enough. It doesn't go in much. It only goes in yay much, so you want to catch as much of the line as you can. The inner, this is 1/2 inch, and then your outer is 9/16. And as you're tightening this, again, make sure that's not sliding up on you. Once you get a good turn or so, maybe a turn and a half, it shouldn't really move on you. Take your time. You're better off getting it right the first time, because you don't get a second chance. Once that ferrule crimps, it's not reusable. All right, so I tightened that up nicely off camera. So hopefully we don't have any leaks there. I feel pretty confident in it. So I got this bungee cord holding that in place. So I'm going to undo that now. I'm not going to put this on camera. I'm just going to finagle this back in place. Down up underneath, we're going to hook it back up to the fuel pump. And this guy here should end up somewhere's in here. You know, I'll start filming once I get it back in place. And then we're going to start putting our rubber fuel line on, our inline fuel filter, and hooking it up. So anyway, that's probably going to be the hardest part of this whole project. Working with this gas line is a real pain. I was half tempted to take this compressor out of the way. Would have made life a lot easier, but I didn't want to fool with it. So you can do it. It's just got to be a little bit patient. All right, so take your 5/16 fuel hose. Make sure you got the proper size pinch clamp, or unless you're using the other style where you tighten them up, pair of pliers, vice grips or something. And you got to spread this thing out pretty far to fit around that hose. Like that. Slide it down about an inch or so for now. Actually, more like an inch and a half, 2 inches. We want to make sure that we can get the hose completely pushed onto our new barb fitting there. You're just going to release it for now. We're going to end up moving that. All right, you can see that green tape right there. I just put that over the end while I was tightening up the bottom because this thing was frailing around. I didn't want anything to fall down inside, so we got to get that off. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take our hose now, and hopefully you're seeing that barb. There it is. We're going to slide that down there as far as we can. All right, you can see I got that hose all the way down to the barb until it's bottomed out. Now we got to get our clamp here, re-squeeze that, and it's going to be a little tight, but we should be able to, not quite to the bottom, but just above it, we should be good. All right, so quick change of plan here. We're talking about these squeeze clamps, which I like. In fact, I think earlier on I said make sure you get the right size, and I didn't. These fit on the hose, no problem, but once you push the hose on to the barb, here's the filter we're going to be using. The barbs have this beveled end, and so the hose is nice and tight. That's really what's making your seal right there. So once you stretch out that rubber, I couldn't compress this enough to get it to work properly. I could have forced it on, but it was maxed out. And so anyway, with that being said, I'm going to go with this style here. This is a screw type. These are going to open up big enough to work for me, just barely. I didn't want to oversize them. And I think I mentioned earlier in the video, I don't like the old screw type, I'll call them. They're kind of like perforated, and those are the ones when you tighten it, the tail sticks out. If you tighten them too much, they usually snap, or they get to a point where they won't tighten anymore. And I think they kind of look junky. But anyway, these are a good alternative, so we're going to go with these. All right, so we got our hose on there now. It's clamped on the other end. I got like 2 foot of hose here, so I got the whole piece kind of draped there. So now I'm going to get a marker. I'm going to take our new filter, and we're going to put that in line, probably like here somewhere. We have to leave ourselves enough hose where we can get that into there. It's going to be a little tight, but I think we'll get it. Here's the part number for this filter. Obviously, you don't have to use this kind of filter. This has the brass type filter on the inside, so you can unscrew this and clean it or change it. So it's kind of nice. I was just going to get a clear filter, but they didn't have one with the 5/16 ends on it. So this was a little pricey. It's like $14-15, but it is a good filter, and it's easy to clean and change. All right, so I'm going to get my razor blade. We're going to make some marks where this filter is going to go, and we're going to get that guy installed.
All right, so that's the end result. Make sure you get all your clamps nice and tight. Got one there, one before the filter, one after the filter, and of course going into the carb. So later on I'll be able to undo this and change or clean the filter if I need be. But I'm happy with that. It was definitely not the easiest part of the job. Again, if you got an AC car, that compressor's literally right in your way the whole time. But we got everything on there good. I'm going to go ahead and work on the electric choke now, show you how to hook that up. Once that's done, I got some wiring to plug back in. I got new plugs and wires that are going on, put the distributor cap back on, and should be ready to test this. All right, now I'm going to work on installing the PCV valve line to the new carburetor. Here's the old carburetor. This is the way the setup was originally. You had a small piece of hose. You had the bent steel line, another piece of hose, and then the PCV valve and your breather. We're just kind of duplicating that, except we're not going to use this steel line because it's not going to line up. The new lines are pretty similar in location to these on the original, except they're over a little bit and they're at an angle, so this line's not going to work. So we're going to go with flexible line, which is completely fine. We've got a new breather and a new PCV valve. All right, so there's the front of the new carb, and your lines, again, you're pretty close to where the new carb is. I know it's going to be hard to see here, but you can see where my finger's pointing. That's one of the ports, and if you see that black cap behind it, the larger one, that's the one we're going to be tapping into. The small one we shouldn't need for anything right now, so we'll leave that capped off, but we'll be getting our new flexible hose coming off of there. We're going to route it through here somehow, and our new breather is going to go in here and our new PCV valve. All right, so I removed the coil to give myself a little bit more room. Now you guys should be able to get a better look at that. You see that right there? Again, that's the small line that's still capped off, and then this is our new line going to the PCV valve. Again, it's a hard angle, you can't see it, but I got it on there. It's a nice tight fit, which it should be. And then we just got this hose kind of laced through here and going up to our new PCV valve. And again, that's a nice tight fit. That's not going anywhere. So basically that's it. That eliminates the steel line, which again doesn't line up anymore. So that's it, and we're going to move on to this electric choke now. All right, I'm running the wire for the electric choke. I'm going to go through the firewall, driver's side, underneath the windshield washer motor. There's a place you can get behind. That should pretty much get us, hopefully, right where the fuse panel is. That's where I want to be. There it is. Already popped through. So I'm going to pull a little more through here. And our fuse panel's up in here, so we're going to get up inside of there, and I'll show you how I'm going to hook that up. All right, this is what we're going to use to tie that choke in. We're going to go right into the fuse box. I call this a piggyback fuse. They're calling it a add a circuit. Basically what you have here is you find out what you want to tap into. Let's just say it ends up being the headlight circuit. You would pull the fuse out for the headlight circuit. You would plug this guy in here. I'm not sure which one it is, but one of these sets here, you would put the fuse back in for the, say, the headlights, and that would continue to fuse the headlights like it normally did. The other side, you're going to put your new fuse, and that's going to power this red wire, and that's what we're going to hook our electric choke to. So it's a nice way to do it without having to cut into your wiring harness. You can definitely find something under the hood that's close by. You know, again, you got to have that 12 volts all the time when the keys turn forward. But then you got to hack into your wiring harness, and I'd rather not do that. So this is definitely the right way to do it, but you don't have to. You can pretty much tie into something, you know, underneath the hood, as long as you find something that's 12 volt constant with the key turn forward. But we're going to go ahead, we're going to do it this way. All right, you're going to unscrew your cover. That's underneath your steering column. There's 4 screws that hold it on. Get that out of your way. Now you're going to take a look underneath here, and we're going to see what we're going to grab here. That 20 amp right there looks like it's marked accessory, so I'm assuming that's
that'll work for us. So I'm going to try that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that and get set up. All right, so grab yourself a meter. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just needs to be able to read 12 volts DC. Ground one end of your meter. I just stuck it on some metal, jammed it in between that bracket right there. So that should be a good ground. And I'm going to try this accessory fuse. Ignore those readings right now. Those are it's just bouncing around. It's a digital meter. It's actually reading millivolts. Make sure you're set on DC. So we're going to check the fuse. That's a true accessory fuse. We should have nothing. Again, we're reading 1.2 millivolts. It's really nothing. Go to the other side. Same thing, nothing. All right, so I don't have my third hand here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the key forward now. So turn it as far as it'll go without starting the car. And now we're going to go back on that accessory fuse. And now we're getting 11.55. It's close enough to 12 for me. Check the other side of the fuse. 11.58. Turn the key off, and we should lose our voltage. Nothing. And nothing. Again, those numbers there don't mean anything. That's millivolts. This is a digital meter going wacky. So that's a good fuse. That's the 20 amp fuse right there. If you can see underneath there, it's actually marked accessory. So that's a good fuse. So that's the one we're going to jump into. All right. So you're going to remove that 20 amp fuse. I already did it, but it was plugged into here. So now that 20 amp fuse is plugged into the top of the piggyback, and I got a new 15 amp fuse at the bottom. And if you follow, let's see if I get a better angle. If you follow that 15 amp fuse over, it goes to the red line. So it's the fuse that's in line with the red wire. That's the one that's going to be for our electric choke now. We'll test that once this is all wired up. I'll get underneath the hood with the meter, and I'll have somebody turn the key on and off to make sure power's coming on and coming off. So basically that's it. Remove your 20 amp fuse, plug your piggyback in. This is just like a fuse now. Just pulls out. Just push it in there, make sure it's nice and tight. I should still have plenty of clearance to get my cover back on. So now this is our wire that I ran that's going to go up to the choke. This is the pigtail they gave us, and I got that guy stripped. I'm going to put that in that butt crimp, and I'm going to crimp it, and then we'll neaten up the wires a little bit, and we'll be able to put our cover back on. I'm going to do that off camera because I only have two hands. All right, so now that that's crimped, we can neaten up our wire here. Leave yourself a little bit of slack there. And now you're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and put the cover back on. I got my wire just draped under here. We obviously have to neaten that up. I'll do that off camera. That's not rocket science. Just make sure you do tie it up. You don't want to get that wrapped around the pedal, and then you won't have brakes or whatever. So, yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and neaten that wire up. And once I get that done, we'll tie it into the choke. We'll test it. And then we should be able to be ready to try to start this thing up. All right, so I'm finishing up routing this wire. I did end up redoing that wire. I didn't like it on the outside of this grommet. It was tight, but I ended up getting it in through the other wiring harness. So I'm just going across the back of the firewall here. I am going to eventually get this wire into the wiring harness. The wiring harness, obviously, the jacket is split, so I'll be able to slip it in there. Right now, I just want to get this thing hooked up so I can test it. I used a piece of this wiring sleeve here where it's going to drape across here to hook up to the choke. So that'll be like that. It'll protect it from the heat and from abrasion and stuff. So I got to cut the wire now and crimp an end on it. And then that'll be going on the choke right there on the right-hand side. The left-hand side is the ground. It's hooked to the body of the carburetor, and the carburetor is bolted to the manifold, and everything should be bonded on this car, so you shouldn't have to reground this. If for some reason you weren't grounded, you would have to come off this somehow and find something to ground to, but I think we'll be fine. Even though I have a wooden spacer there, you still got the studs that are in the manifold, and then you got the nut, so I don't think we're going to have any problems with that whatsoever. So anyway, I got to crimp that, put that on there, and I think we'll be ready to try to start this. All right, so we're going to test our 12 volts at the electric choke now. I have my daughter in the car. She's going to turn the key forward without starting it, and we're going to make sure that we're getting 12 volts here. Again, don't worry about these numbers bouncing around. That's millivolts. It's just what the digital meters do. But we're going to be looking for DC voltage, and this over here will say DC. So, so right now I'm on there, and again, we're not getting anything. That 0.4 doesn't mean anything. All right, go ahead, turn the key forward. All right, now we're getting 11.13, and I know this battery is low on juice. So, all right, turn it back. All right, we just lost our 12 volts. All right, turn it forward again. And there's our 12 volts again. So that's exactly what we want. We want 12 volts there when the key is turned forward. That's basically how that choke operates. When you start the car, it'll have 12 volts on it. Your choke will be closed, so it'll start, and it'll slowly start to open back up. All right, we're going to perform one more test. Something you can do also to make sure that it is working. Right now you can see the choke is fully closed. This flap is down. I'm going to go ahead and turn the key forward, and it should gradually open up. All right, we're going to turn this over, and it should fire up. I just had it running for a couple seconds. I had a really bad miss. I had two of my plug wires were crossed. So I got that corrected. So the carburetor is primed. So with any luck, this thing will start first try. So let's see what happens. All right, so she fired right off. The idle's definitely way high. I'm up almost 2,000 RPMs. So we obviously got to adjust that down a little bit. So I'm going to take a quick look and make sure I got the right screw, and we'll go ahead and do a quick adjustment. All right, so before you attempt any adjustments, which I haven't yet, pull your throttle cable and just let that hang there. Start the car and just let the carburetor idle naturally, I guess you would say, and just make sure it's not any kind of binding from this or pulling from your throttle cable. So I did that, and it's definitely better.
It's still up a little over 1,000. So I'm going to try to tweak my bracket a little bit. This lined up pretty good with the ball, but it's a smidge off, so it is pulling on this just a hair, but it's enough to keep that RPM up there. So I'm going to try a little bit of adjustment on my bracket, and we'll see what happens there first before we start touching any of the stock settings. All right, she's sounding a lot better now. I let it warm up a little bit. I did tweak my bracket a little, and I think I'm around 800 RPM now, which I can live with for now anyway. I'll eventually fine-tune this. So that's not bad. All right, we're going to head out on the maiden voyage after the carburetor install, and we're going to stay close by home just in case, but here we go. Alright, so we just got back from the maiden voyage. It actually ran really good, actually. Idle's a little high still. I want to play around with that a little bit. But I'm pretty much going to end the video there. There is one more thing I want to show you guys, again, for your Fox body guys that had the original Holley carb that came on it. Something I ran into. I guess I'll jump right into that. I was having charging problems afterwards. Again, the car was off the road for 12 years. I started working on it last year, and it was one thing after another. So I kind of remember some starting problems last year, and I had some heat soak problems. But anyway, I'm pretty sure it was charging, a little over 14 volts when it was running last year, but I could be remembering that wrong. But anyway, I was only getting 12 volts. The alternator wasn't charging. Well, I actually can't charge the alternator. We'll get to that. I did put a new alternator in, still the original. It's only like a 65 amp alternator. Eventually I'll do an upgrade on this, but they get a little involved. But anyway, it wasn't the alternator. I tried a different regulator. It wasn't the regulator. I ended up putting the original regulator back in. That's that silver box down there, if you can see it right there with the writing on it. So anyway, I was kind of baffled, pulling my hair out, and figured I had to. Only thing really to me that was left was wiring, so I checked the fusible links. They were fine. So anyway, to get to my point, if you change the original Holley Motorcraft carb, what was on there was this guy here, and I had to plug him back in. I just got him wire tied on there. Right now I'm going to end up putting a jumper on there to make it permanent, but I'm going to see if I can show you this better. Let me, actually, I think I can. All right, so hopefully you're seeing that there. That right there is a little micro switch. This little lever right here opens and closes that switch. This whole piece right here was mounted on the original carburetor up here. And what that did at wide open throttle, it did two things. It kicked out the air conditioning, and it kicked out the charging system. I didn't do a lot of research on it. My assumption is it kicked out the air conditioning for power issues. You're at wide open throttle, with the air conditioning on. You could have bogged it down maybe. And I also would imagine it had to do with the emission controls. It's probably something they had to do. Again, this was an 80s car, so they did a lot of weird stuff like that. And I would imagine that the kicking out the charging system, when you're at wide open throttle, you might exceed 14 volts, and if you do, you could actually blow out light bulbs and, tail lamps and that kind of thing. So that's my thought. Don't quote me on that, but guess that kind of makes sense. But anyway, you have to put that back on. Eventually, I'm going to put a jumper in there so I don't have to have that wire tied like that. Again, I'll just jump it out and wire tie it off somewhere or tape it up or whatever. But if you have a charging issue, more than likely that's it. Took me a while to figure that out. But anyway, want to mention that. Pretty important. That's it.